Hi, I'm Russ Adams. I've spent the better part of 30 years as a special effects artist, and I've decided to take those skills and to translate them into children's education. Now, I'm new to this whole thing, so I'm likely to make some mistakes, but I thought it might be interesting for you to see a project like Bitty Bigfoot and Friends go from development to crowdfunding all the way to launch. And if this does sound like something that would pique your interest, then fire up the coffee pot because I really feel like things are going to go off the deep end. I'm about to take a journey into children's education, and I want you to come along with me. Now, I'm hijacking my own podcast where I normally talk about the issues artists face on a regular basis during our careers. But I'm going to switch gears and I'm going to focus on this project because it's probably the most important thing I've got going right now. And succeed or fail, I'm hoping that you can use this whole thing as a roadmap to get to where you want to be if you're looking at doing something similar, or at least what not to do if it all fails. The project is called Bitty Bigfoot and Friends, and it's going to focus on environmental education, earth sciences, and so forth. Getting those Gen Alpha kids aware of nature and kind of instilling a little bit of environmental responsibility as well. So this all kind of began at the beginning of 2020 during the pandemic, where a lot of parents, us included, suddenly had the role of educator fall on our shoulders. And when it hit hard in a way that I don't feel like most people have felt in close to a century. For the first time in a long time, parents were responsible for teaching their kids, like everything. And for the most part, a lot of us weren't equipped to handle this, especially alone. If you recall, schools were closing en masse and we weren't sure when they were going to open again. And by the end of 2020, the situation didn't seem any better. And despite any bias or political affiliation, what have you, there was a great amount of loss felt by the time that ball fell in Times Square. My wife and I were alone in the house with an infant. She was born literally 3 days before the shutdown. We had no rescue from grandparents or any other family involvement. We were alone in the house with a pink terrorist. We bounced a lot of ideas off each other during those sleepless nights, days, weeks, months. Sorry, flashback. Anyway, we tossed around a lot of ideas about how we wanted our child to be educated. I was the product of the 1970s and 1980s. Gen X all the way and proud of it. Parenting back then, we'll say over the summer, equated to kicking the kids out of the house until sundown. And if it was a rainy day, you were pretty much sitting in front of the television all day, forced to watch soap operas or game shows. And honestly, I don't know which one was worse. Are soap operas even still a thing? I knew way too much about their storylines and the characters. And later in my life, I even managed to become friends with one of the characters from Days of Our Lives. Holy shit, two of them. Sorry, that was another flashback. It happens. My wife and I did agree on one thing. We couldn't dismiss television as an influence in our daughter's life. We didn't want them to just be a means of getting some sleep, getting some rest, having an adult conversation. There I go again. Generally speaking, we wanted whatever she was going to be watching to be educational in some way. Now, we didn't always make the best decisions, but when we did, I think we hit pretty well. We did use programs like Netflix Cocomelon. That was pretty good. And we also used some YouTube stuff like Steve and Maggie, if you've heard of it, Super Simple, and definitely Katie's Classroom. And when she grew out of that, we introduced shows like Word Girl, which was this really cool program, kind of a little bit like the Powerpuff Girls, only they taught vocabulary and different word usage and this superhero kind of thing. Plus, it was really funny even for adults. You know, you could pick up on some of the humor. It was great just to sit there and watch it with her. There was Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood. And thank God Sesame Street was still around. Even though one red puppet seemed to drive the quality into the dirt, There was still reruns, and those things are gold. The programming in Katie's Classroom and Super Simple, those things were just amazing. Between these indie YouTube programs and a daily dose of in-house education, my daughter at the age of 3 was learning how to read. She just turned 5, and her reading skills are already at a first grade level. And thanks to programs like Mathnasium and shows like Netflix NumberBlocks, her math skills are also at a first grade level, and she hasn't even started kindergarten yet. You could say I was really inspired by everything that I was seeing. And as I watched these things with my daughter, I started to realize that there was a bit of a formula to the success of these shows. There was something in common with each one of them that seemed to be, in my opinion, the spark that launched them all. Just look at how many views that shows like Steve and Maggie and Super Simple and Katie's Classroom got. Katie's Classroom was an international hit. I found myself wanting to contribute to this wild west of children's independent education. But every one of these shows had a hook. I mean, not everyone is going to have a Katie. Not every one of them is going to have Steve in that ridiculous puppet. I had the formula, but I didn't have a hook. Or so I thought. Now, my claim to fame comes from my time on a reality show, where I ended up becoming sci-fi's most bleeped person. And the last thing I wanted to be known as was the John McEnroe of children's education. So as I'm trying to think about what my gimmick is, it was staring me right in the face as I was sewing it together. Now, I had been making these Bigfoot costumes for years, and about 8 years ago, someone suggested that I make something cute, and I was like, I don't do cute. I'm a special effects artist. I'm a creature designer. Cute isn't in my vocabulary. Well, apparently it was, because one afternoon I'm sitting in the shop and suddenly it dawns on me, oh my God, why don't we just make a baby one of these? And Bitty Bigfoot was born. And I've sold quite a few over the last 8 years, but I've always wanted to do more with them, and I just wasn't quite sure what. So now I have this creature, and I'm wondering to myself, how can I best use Bitty Bigfoot in an educational sense? And then another bolt of lightning hit. And it dawned on me that Bitty Bigfoot could be the spokesperson for environmental education for kids, for earth sciences, and things like that. Then I had to come up with a plan. I mean, how was I going to use this new ambassador to earth sciences? Now, I know I'm taking liberties here, but I kind of liken Bitty Bigfoot, or the project that I have in mind, I kind of liken it to the 80s cartoons that I grew up with, like the Smurfs, for instance. They too were woodland creatures that, in their own way, protected the environment. And that's what Bitty Bigfoot and his friends would do. A family of crypto woodland creatures that existed beyond the perception of the human world. So I started to think about it. Bitty Bigfoot and Friends would teach things like how littering would impact nature, or teaching environmental respect to the next generation, or a bit of botany to toddlers and young grade school kids. So this is basically how the format would run. Each episode would include a 2D animation of Bitty Bigfoot, his friend Loxee, Moss, and Goldee on an adventure and learning something new that they would have to figure out, but also maybe get some help here and there. And then that lesson that they learned would be reinforced in a next segment. And that next segment would be a puppet segment. And that puppet would be a grumpy grandpa type, and his name is Grumples Yowie. And Grumples, he will reinforce what the kids learn in the animation. And then when that segment is done, we would move on to either a craft or a science project with some live action. And just a little aside, each one of these characters represent a different type of Bigfoot, because around the world, Bigfoot is described as having a different appearance. Even in the United States, the appearance changes. For instance, Bitty Bigfoot is sort of like the Smith Bigfoot. He's just the general run-of-the-mill Bigfoot. Loxee Sasquatch is more of a spiritual individual from the Sasquatch family. Then you have Yellow Caps, which is more of a Midwestern view of the Bigfoot character, and they typically have they typically have light brown fur and sport like a blonde, mop on top of their heads, which Goldie will certainly do. And then there's Moss, who is Moss Skunk Ape. Moss is clearly a skunk ape, and a skunk ape is described as being very smelly, sometimes gray with a stripe down their back, not necessarily white, but a lighter color of gray. And then you have Grumple's Yowie. And Yowie is an Australian Bigfoot described as being more blonde from head to toe, kind of a sandy blonde. The funny thing about Grumple's is his design started out as a skunk ape, but because of the fact that we're trying to fund this with our own resources right now, I had to find what fur that I had on hand, and all I had was this light sandy colored fur. And I was like, you know what? We're just going to go ahead and change him into a Yowie, and we'll figure out somehow how a Bigfoot from Australia ended up in the middle of the United States. We'll sort of just leave that, out there as a mystery until we're ready to come up with an idea, because it's clearly he didn't just hop on an airplane. Maybe he did. I have done a lot of research, a year's worth of research, just trying to figure out how I'm going to pull this project off. And the most expensive portion of the project is going to be that first 5 minutes of animation. Animation isn't cheap. And it's only one of the costs associated with this project. We have voice actors that have to, voice the characters. Even down to the production things. Even if we're trying to keep it in-house, we still need things like, camera equipment, lighting, miniatures, stuff like that. And because of my concern with the cost of 2D animation, which I really, really think is an important part of this, I have tried to come up with a backup plan in case funding doesn't provide for 2D animation, working in a more stop motion animation process. And the reason why I'm saying that might be cheaper is only because that fits within my wheelhouse, and it's something that I can do myself, and obviously not cost as much money because I don't have to employ additional artists. I can do that stuff myself. But again, I feel like the 2D is the most important part of the entire show. Some will say that there are a number of ways that I can go out and raise money, but there really isn't. I mean, grants are basically a pipe dream, especially in today's political climate. You're not likely to find one or two people to invest in the project to offer up enough funds to really pull it off. So that leaves crowdfunding, which has its own set of problems. Too many people have muddied the water with scams and cons that turned crowdfunding into something that's not altogether trustworthy. Then you have the corporate element that saw independents like me trying to raise money and realized, oh my God, we can go in there and raise money this way without having to come up with it ourselves. And then that led to a series of problems with the crowdfunding process, which I'll get into in later videos. I don't necessarily feel like my method is going to be the lightning rod that changes everything for creators when it comes to crowdfunding, but I have high hopes that it might at least give us a new path, kind of nudge us in the right direction for the future. And the first part of that is I'm going to try to do a lot of this stuff myself, which kind of sucks. There's a lot of work involved. Like I said, I've already started the plan B with the stop motion animation. I'm building out proof of concepts, specifically with the Grumple's Yowie, which he's over there. That's why I kind of pointed that way. The Grumple's Yowie puppet. He's already I'm going to say he's about 85% complete. Things like that are going to help me when I go into crowdfunding because I'm going to be able to show those things off. Now, I'm going to go into more detail with my method for the crowdfunding process in another video. But here, I just wanted to kind of create this as an overview of the entire project and what I hope to glean from it. And this is something that I'm going to go ahead and share with you now, and I'm going to reinforce in a future video. One of the things that I'm going to do that most often doesn't seem to happen in crowdfunding is I'm going to have those rewards ready to roll before the crowdfunding starts, or at least have them completed by the time the crowdfunding ends. And what that does is it shows those people who are picking those rewards that they're 100% guaranteed to get that item. Where a lot of crowdfunding will take years to provide those rewards to the people who have pledged or backed their project, this one's going to have them sitting on a shelf, and there'll probably be a limited amount. For instance, a Bitty Bigfoot. Those Bitty Bigfoot plushes will be hand sewn and created and sitting on the shelf waiting. And I might have 15 or 20 of them, but that means there's only 15 or 20 of them available. So if if 15 or 20 people choose that reward, they know that once the crowdfunding ends and it's funded, and we've met our goal and it's funded, then I will immediately start mailing those out. But I will have other rewards, things like a children's board book, based on the first 3 episodes or 3 of the episodes of the show. So I feel like that's a key to the success of this crowdfunding is people knowing ahead of time, being able to see them with their own eyes on the shelf, that this stuff is complete and ready to go. And the third thing is, my goal is to create a series of videos like this one, where I'm hijacking my podcast and I'm inserting this. These videos, I hope, will serve, as I mentioned before, I hope will serve as a roadmap to the success for others. If it's a success. If it's not, and it's very possible that this won't be, that this is at least a roadmap to tell you what not to do, so you still have a chance to learn from what you're seeing. And the viewership that comes in from these videos will hopefully help boost my following here on YouTube, so that I have more people I can reach when it comes time to launch that crowdfunding campaign. So it's all kind of tied together, in hopes of making this whole project a success. The fourth thing that is sort of obscure but central to this is the homeschooling movement that's taking place in the United States right now. Now, whether people are homeschooling because they're not comfortable with the school violence, or they're uncomfortable with the bullying in schools, or maybe they just don't like the curriculum that's being taught. I know a lot of stuff is starting to swing towards religion, and I don't want any part of that. I don't want my daughter having any part of that. So, this is, these are some of the reasons why we're homeschooling. And to be honest, I feel at this point, with my daughter, had not even starting kindergarten yet, knows how to read at a first grade level, knows how to math at a first grade level, I think we're doing pretty well. Now, there's always going to be an element to homeschooling that parents aren't comfortable with. And for us, it was the math skills. We didn't feel comfortable teaching that to my daughter. I didn't feel like I had the tools in my toolkit to be able to do that. Granted, I know math, I just don't feel like I can teach math. So we employed companies like Mathnasium, who has this amazing program where she got in when she was 40 years old and started that math program, and she's been there 8 months. And again, I'm going to tout the fact that she's not even in kindergarten yet and already at a first grade math level. I mean, that's amazing, and it's all due to Mathnasium. There are going to be elements that parents are looking for to help them augment their homeschooling requirements, and they're not always going to be able to afford a place like Mathnasium. So programs like this that teach for free things like earth sciences to kids are going to help, like I said, augment that educational process, kind of take the pressure off the parent. And like I said, it's completely free. It'll be available on YouTube for them to just watch. And my goal is that we will get paid through clicks and views like any other creator on YouTube. And that'll hopefully, with luck, be enough to sustain us for season upon season upon season. So how can you help Bitty Bigfoot and Friends? Right now, you can help by just liking this video, subscribing, and sharing. And just keep an eye out for future videos that I'm putting out about the process, because I'm going to document everything I can so that you can see how things are going. Because I know there's a lot of us out there that are interested in this independent educational Wild West revolution that's going on, and you might have an idea that you want to see come to fruition and not have an idea of where to start. And at least in this case, you'll be able to see either way how things play out. So do me a favor and help me spread the word about Bitty Bigfoot and Friends. And thank you so much for your support throughout this entire journey, because it's going to be a long one and it's going to be trying. And I'm hoping that I have you guys in my corner when we start to launch this. So until the next video, I hope you keep that creativity flowing.